Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my mid-year reading stats.
I should've told you that I loved you one more time.
So at the beginning of this year, in my goals video, I mentioned how I wanted to be better about keeping up with my reading stats and keeping consistent reading stats, so that way at the end of this year, and then hopefully in years to come, I will be able to look back at my reading and set goals for if I want to read a certain number of books from certain genres or whatever the case may be. I don't necessarily have that specific of a goal right now. Right now I'm just sort of trying to see what I naturally go to. I am trying to read as many authors of color and diverse authors as I possibly can, but I'm not, unfortunately, making as big of a commitment to every month saying I'm going to read 50% non-white authors at least, although that is my, I guess now it's spoken, but it's kind of my unspoken goal. But as you will see when we get into that part of the video, I did not quite make it there. But without further ado, I just wanted to go ahead and get into the stats. Oh, I did also want to mention that every single month when I do my wrap-ups, I do my reading stats at the beginning of my wrap-ups. So if you like this style of thing, I do go into it there. But I also have some different stats included in this that I don't calculate every month, and I'll sort of go over those when I get to them. So first and foremost, I did read 77 books in the first half of the year, which is really good for me. That's more than I read at the first half of last year by a lot, I'm pretty sure. But I didn't read a single book before April last year, so that is potentially why. I also have read a total of 29,455 pages.
What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read.
I have DNF'd 2 books so far this year. I DNF'd Middlemarch by George Eliot. I was doing a group buddy read with Kira Foster and Mary Among Stories, as well as a bunch of other people, and I just didn't like it, and I never wanted to read it, so I just didn't. And it's not like a DNF to the point where I will never pick it up again. And there's also nothing really wrong with it. It's long, and I wasn't in the mood for it at the time, and I don't foresee myself ever being in the mood for it unless I actively make myself in the mood for it. I don't know how I would do that, but yes, that's one of them. And the other is Apple by Eric Gansworth, I believe is his name. And that one, I just really didn't drive with the writing style. It's a memoir, so I feel bad that I DNF'd it, but...
And just remember, no one will ever be able to hate you more than you already hate yourself.
It's written in verse, and I didn't think it needed to be, and the verse just made it worse. I'm a poet, and I didn't even know it.
Laughing my fucking ass off.
I also listened to that as an audiobook, which I think really hampered my enjoyment, which is odd because normally I say that I love when audiobooks are narrated by the people who wrote them, and Eric Gansworth was the narrator for the audiobook. But that just made his poetry seem even more disjointed to me for some reason. I just didn't like it. So I don't think I'm ever going to pick that book up again, unfortunately. Sad.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you?
So far this year, I've read from authors that are from 11 different countries. This is something that I've started keeping track of this year, what countries I'm reading from, because I would like to read. I mean, according to a quick Google search, there are anywhere between 174 and 249 countries in the world, depending on how you count what a country is. I don't really know why there are so many different answers to that, but I would like to read from more people with diverse backgrounds, not just people in the United States with diverse backgrounds, but also people all over the world, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to expand my cultural horizons here. And that's just fun for me to track. I don't really have a goal in mind. I think eventually I would like to have read something from someone from every single country in the world, but that's not something that at this point I'm actively pushing for. And then, I don't know really how to explain this, but I did go ahead and count up the number of authors that I have read multiple times during this year, and also the number of authors that I'd read prior to this year. So, for authors that I just read one book from this year, and that's it, I have 51, which is 83%. For authors that I've read 2 books from, I have 6, which is 10%. And for authors that I've read 3 or more works from this year, I have 4, which is 7%, which is honestly a lot more than I felt like I would have. But I did read multiple series this year. Have I finished a series yet? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. That's something that I did not calculate because I like to calculate my series stuff at the beginning / end of every year, just wrapping up the series that I read, if that makes sense. Stay tuned for that video. I'll link last year's somewhere so you can watch it if you're curious. From authors that I'd read from before this year, I had 7, which is 11% of the authors that I read. Or 11% of the books that I read were by authors that I'd read from before. Does that make sense? I hope so. For my genre breakdown, I have read 35% fantasy this year, 19% contemporary romance, 12% nonfiction, 9% science fiction, 9% mystery thriller, 8% classic, 4% horror, 3% literary fiction, and 1% historical fiction. I've read 1 historical fiction all year, which is funny because that used to be a genre that I would say is one of my favorites, but I really don't read it very much. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this is I tend to like sci-fi. Like fantasy tends to be like a 3 to 4 star for me. Like I don't think I have any like 5-star, oh my god, I love this fantasies. I actually have a couple that I can think of off the top of my head.
I was lying. It was a lie.
But like for the most part, I enjoy them, but I don't love them. Whereas science fiction, I either absolutely love it or I think it was boring. So I thought it was interesting that I haven't read as many science fiction books because I would have said that that is my favorite genre, but I don't read that much of it. I don't know. I was not expecting fantasy to lead by as much as it did, but also I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of things are counted as fantasy, even if they're not like strictly high fantasy, because I don't really read high fantasy, but there's that. For the demographics, I have read 62% of books that are targeted at adult audiences, 34% of my reads have been targeted at young adult audiences, and 4% of my reads have been targeted at middle grade. Those are 3 books, and I know exactly. It's the Percy Jackson books that I read, and then also Amari and the Night Brothers. And that makes sense to me. I don't read a lot of middle grade. It's not like one of the demographics that I really long to read. I typically only read the like favorites, if those, to be honest. And then it also makes sense that I'm reading more adult than YA. I am 25, so it makes sense to me that I would read mostly adult books. My average star rating at this point in the year is 3.75 stars, which is pretty good. It's kind of lower than I thought it would be, but it makes sense that that's where it is. So like, I'm not mad about it. I remember I calculated it and I was like, oh, I thought it'd be a little higher. Like I thought it'd be closer to 4, but still in the 3s, if that makes sense. I don't know. As far as ways that I've read this year, I've read 19 books via audio, 28 books physically, 13 books via ebook, and 5 books using a combination of the 3, some sort of combination. I didn't calculate exactly which ones were ebooks and audio, or physical and ebook, or physical and audio, or all 3, or whatever. Let me know in the comments down below, because I was wondering what the best way to go about doing this is. And I originally thought I would just count in both, because I do keep track every month what combo I do. If I like listen to a book and read it physically, I will say that I did a combination in my like reading journal or whatever. But I was wondering if it would make sense, because my initial thought was that I would just put an extra book in both of the categories that I read, and then I would just end up with more than 77 in that total number, and I didn't know if that would bother people or not. So let me know if you think I should do that. I might do it going forward and then just do the percentages like I did the genres. Let me know. So I am trying to do a project where I read books from my own shelves this year, and so far I've read 12 books from my own TBR and borrowed 64 books from the library, but is that right? That only adds up to 76. I don't know what I'm missing. That's fine, doesn't matter. But if you watched my, what video was it? It was my owned TBR video, like every book that I own and have not read. In that video, oh no, it might have been my goals video. It was one of those, I don't remember. I think it was my goals video. In my goals video, I said that I wanted to read 1 book a month at least from my own TBR. So that was 12 books. So I've already read more than that. I've bought way more than 12 books this year, but I'll take it. As far as the author stats, I have read 64% of my books from white authors, which leaves 36% from authors of color. And 68% of what I've read have been by female authors, as opposed to 32% by male authors. So I'm pretty happy with the way that is rounding out. I would like to be 50-50 sort of for both of those categories to start, and then eventually I would like to be reading more by authors of color. Originally, when I was doing my, I guess, race statistics, I was using people who self-identify as a different race / nationality slash ethnicity and using specifically what they would say. There are some authors that I just don't know. And I mean, there's not really a way to perfect that. And that's also the reason that I didn't include stats on like sexuality and their identification that way, because I feel like it's too much to ask an author to disclose that, because they don't know me, you know? And so I just forgoed, what is that word?
Is it possible you're wrong?
No.
I just decided to forgo that entirely rather than get something wrong or just like have to do a bunch of digging if it's not like openly apparent. I just didn't feel the need to go into it like that. So just putting that out there. But that is it for my stats for the first half of the year. If you enjoy stats videos, let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. If you have any advice for how to formulate statistics going forward, and if you prefer me to use the number of books / number of authors, the actual number, or if you prefer percentages. I think I prefer percentages, but I noticed as I was doing this that I only did percentages for some of the things. So let me know what you prefer for that, but that's gonna be it for today's video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel because I do post 2 videos every single week, and I will see you in my next one.